know the names of the 2 corrections officers and 8 prisoners killed when their bus slipped on the ice and crashed into a train.
The driver was wearing a seatbelt, but no one else on the bus had access to one. In addition to the 10 deaths, 5 other people on board were seriously injured. Some of the victims were thrown from the bus in this crash.
Among the dead, Christopher Davis and Elegio Garcia. Davis was a 17-year veteran with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. Garcia worked there for 22 years. The inmates mostly came from the Dallas and West Texas areas.
News of today's crash is important because in an extreme way, it shows what can go wrong with these transports. It's not just the state prisons, but individual county departments that transport hundreds of prisoners every day in Texas for one reason or another. What about safety and security rules for them and the rest of us? KXAN's David Scott went to Hays County to see how they handle it.
Most days, Hays deputies are transporting someone to court or increasingly transferring their overflow to Guadalupe County because their own quarter-century-old jail is overcrowded. A handful go in the van. A dozen or more take the bus. Especially bad hombres get their own special ride.
Well, if you've got someone that's of that caliber, yes, and you're going to maybe 2 officers with him, he'll have really be restraint, and he'll probably be hauled by himself.
Inmates themselves scrub down the bus. The armed driver is especially trained at the wheel, and more guards are in those cages.
Yes, we have an armed deputy sitting behind, watching the inmates during transportation.
One in there behind the cage.
Yes, sir.
And then you got another guy behind the cage up front.
That's correct.
A deputy patrol car often tails behind. Inmates wear special bracelets for transport, and not the kind you wear to the policeman's ball. Guys would be handcuffed together like this.
Correct.
Okay. And then each guy has his own foot shackle.
That is correct.
So prisoners are restrained. But if there's an accident, like in West Texas, the sheriff says they do have the ability to get around.
Yes, they've got freedom of movement because, you know, if they're handcuffed to the person next to them, they're free to this half except for their legs. And you got to understand the leg irons, the chain has got some, you know, they can walk with it. The chain is not that tight.
The sheriff says prisoners are on their best behavior when they're going to court. They're in a good mood because he says that's the day they might just get their release. Robert?
Well, David, do county deputies have to follow any standard state guidelines or regulations?
Interestingly, no. The state does not interfere with that. Each of the 254 counties in Texas sets their own rules based on experience, common sense, and the security needs. Now, for example, a Hays inmate transfer would be taken to Guadalupe County by Hays deputies and eventually returned by those deputies, not by the Guadalupe officers, and there are 26 of those inmates on transfer now. And a serious felon who's going to the big prison would be the responsibility of state authorities.
Okay. David Scott, thanks.